I thought I'd seen some shameful things being done by so-called PlayStation fanboys, but one of the most shameful things has just recently transpired. I made a version of this video, but I kind of wanted to back away from it. But you know what? There are just some times that you have to say something. I couldn't be bothered about a lot of these folk because to me, I think, empty vessels make the most noise. However, sometimes you need to answer a fool, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Sarbravian, more recently, has been under some personal attacks from these PlayStation fanboys. One of them, some people came out and actually lambasted that. That was absolutely inappropriate and quite a terrible thing to have done or attempted to do to another man. The more recent one is this post by Oliver Darko where he takes a 40-second clip of Sarbravian and listen to what he says. Then I'll play the clip for you and you're going to see what I think is a very interesting transposition of his position in the mind of Oliver Darko, a PlayStation aficionado. Oliver Darko writes and says, Xbox podcaster Bravian goes on a wild rant, implies if it wasn't for Game Pass, he would be, in quote, lost and not be able to put food on the table. Then he writes and says he needlessly uses his own toddler as argument and then claims it's common sense to switch from PlayStation 5 to Microsoft's next hybrid PC console, dead emoji. Okay, let's go ahead and let's listen to what is actually been said here. Let's see if it actually matches with what Oliver Darko has proposed. You ready? Let's go.
Trust me, when you're an adult, when you're a man, not a child hiding behind a keyboard and Twitter, when you are a man with food to put on the table, bills to pay, a child to support, you have to look for value, right? An Xbox is phenomenal. I'd be lost without it right now. A lot of you so-called die-hard PlayStation guys will move to Xbox. Because you'll be thinking, hang on a minute, if I can play God of War, if I can play all these games on the Xbox, but also get Game Pass and Steam, what am I doing on a PlayStation, bro? It's just common sense. Common sense will move a lot of people. The only people that will remain are the die-hard fanatical elitists that just cannot see past their own fandom and trust.
So what he said was people will seek value. Then he pointed out that in the case of those who have other priorities, food to put on the table, people to care for, will more than likely seek value. This is normal human behavior. Oliver Darko, I don't know how you interact with other people or how you interact with the world, but I can say that not just anecdotally, but you can even go around and look at scientific research to see how consumers even behave. In fact, in some cases, you'd be very surprised that some consumers that you would not believe behave that way, that is to seek value, actually do behave that way. Do you know that this was actually not even the most shameful of all of it? Because this is just pretty much him misconstruing what somebody else has said. This was a personal attack, pretty much throwing his, shade on him and misconstruing what he said and use his family and his own concerns to try to paint him in a bad light. Oliver Darko, I do not want to attack you. I do not know you, but I would say that this action is one that I strongly believe is out of malice. And it's quite shameful that you've tried to lie on another man. But I wouldn't talk anymore about what you've done. Then you had Nib95, who posted or quoted Oliver Darko with a huge missive of how, according to him, and I quote, I have no qualms with people prioritizing value above all else. Then he says, but understand, there will always be folk who instead prioritize quality or what's most appealing, at least if they have the money to do so. All right, Nib, this is where I was going when I said that there are some people who would probably surprise you by not prioritizing so-called quality, but rather value, even though they have the money to do so. For instance, Warren Buffett's wife. She was overheard at a billionaire's retreat complaining that a cup of coffee was $4. Now, why was she complaining about a $4 cup of coffee? Well, it's a very simple thing. In her mind, regardless of the value, regardless of what it is that they were trying to sell to her, it was just a cup of coffee. In fact, the writer here, Grace K, said something really weird and said, well, maybe because the 77-year-old Astrid Buffett, grew up in a time where, this was a very different life and blah, blah, blah. And unlike many billionaires, Warren Buffett's home is relatively understated because he lives in the same house he bought in Omaha in 1958 for $31,500. And perhaps that's why a $4 cup of coffee apparently was such a shock to Astrid Buffett. I have to say, Grace K, the way you wrote that, you made it seem like Miss Buffett is a relic. But I have to say that her pinky can buy your entire publication. So you have to be very careful and cautious. Maybe learn about the mindset of these people that are quite wealthy before you speak for them. If you actually do a very interesting digging in terms of wealthy people, many of them do not pursue a lot of these things that some other people may pursue, because for them, value is inherent in other things that are not the materialistic or a lot of the products that a lot of consumers basically pursue. Nib wrote this. He said, even if they're a man, in quote, bold italicized, with bills to pay, in quote, and a child to support, and then LOL. This is condescending. Ladies and gentlemen, some of these folk are so disrespectful. You have to wonder, as somebody who grew up in Africa, they spanked us when we addressed people. We needed to make sure that we address them with respect. In this video, I'm going to try my best to also maintain that value system, but I got to admit, some of these kids that got raised in the West, bro, nobody actually took a whooping to the butts of these entitled little brats that they can just talk like this, hiding behind a keyboard. This Nib gentleman over here is not a gentleman yet, is basically one of the most disrespectful people I have ever encountered. Sobrovian can take care of his own arguments. He's a gentleman. He can deal with this. But something in me was like, there's no way you can sit by, VG, and let these people just talk like this without at least somebody addressing their behavior. Then he said, else, with the flawed logic shared by Sobrovian here, you might as well disregard every premium purchasing choice ever, LOL. Then he said, don't get a Mercedes instead of a Skoda because you have a family to feed. Wow. What a condescending tone and what a condescending address to another man. But here, you need an education, so I'll give you one. And out of respect for the values and the people who taught me those values, I'll try my best not to insult you because I don't know you. So a mandatory reading piece for Nib, if he was my student, I'd make him write a big, huge essay on the book The Millionaire Next Door, which is a book that was done back in the day by Thomas J. Stanley in the 90s, where he was able to survey, discuss, and gather a lot of the thoughts of millionaires across the country, the United States, and actually was able to find out their behavior when it came to buying premium cars. Now, this was done with other products, but the cars really did stand out because, again, Nib, you went ahead and highlighted this like, maybe because you think or feel you are probably better off than somebody else. I don't know, but it sounds like that to me. Maybe I'm missing something. An AI overview about this particular notion says that Thomas Stanley in his book suggests that many millionaires tend to buy cars based on their value per pound, prioritizing practicality and value over status symbols rather than focusing on the price tag. Nib, wealthy people, majority of them are known to value other things in terms of the product, compared to the products that they actually do consume. In fact, if you go to the millionairenextdoor.com, myth number 4, which is called used cars in the blog, it's actually well documented that these so-called millionaires, people who were actually wealthy and had a net worth of over $1 million. There's even another book called The Millionaire Mind, which is about decamillionaires and multimillionaires. You even be more shocked that with all the money that they have, they still behave like this. So check this out. Over time, the facts and words are found in the Millionaire Next Door sometimes get twisted. It's a myth that most Millionaire Next Door types buy only used cars. That's not even what I was talking about. In fact, for every one millionaire, that is used vehicle prone, there are 2 who tend to buy new vehicles. Yet I'm often asked why I devoted so much ink to this minority segment. Within the used vehicle prone segment, there are 2 subsegments. One that's most illuminating is the UVPs, used vehicle prone shopper, which makes about 20% of the millionaire next door population. The book is about regular everyday millionaires who live regular lives that don't flex or show off if they maybe have some wealth or another. And I know you guys didn't expect this conversation to jump this way. But again, I told y'all that econ was my favorite subject in school. So these kinds of topics are very interesting to me. When asked how he gets a good deal when acquiring a motor vehicle, UVP's number one response is buying used cars via aggressive shopping among private owners, dealers, leasing companies, etc. But there's much more to this story than the acquisition of motor vehicles. UVP segment represents literally hundreds of productive habits, financial lifestyle patterns, and attitudes. In fact, the UVP's segment is more productive in transforming income into wealth than any of the other vehicle acquisition groups among the millionaire population. Interestingly, its members are more likely than the norm to have incomes under 6 figures. Most households in America will never generate a high income. Of course, income is a correlate of net worth, but understanding this, the UVP's members are determined to accumulate wealth via playing great financial defense, stretching their dollars of income in the most productive manners. For example, they spend less than 65% for their motor vehicles than is the norm for other millionaire types. Nib, if millionaires are behaving like this and another person seeks to prioritize value in not blowing all their money, then the flex is for that person who emulates those who are carrying out behaviors that have made them have a better financial stable ground. I cannot see where your premise is going after this first side of the conversation, because not only do you not stop there, you dig in deeper. And I can say this is probably as a result of, lack of experience in this area and in probably other areas out there. I can't blame you for it. So let's keep reading what you said. You said, or an iPhone instead of a TCL, or a Series X instead of a Series S, or an OLED TV instead of a cheap LCD, a nice restaurant instead of McDonald's, and so on, all because you have a family to feed, LOL. Well, wouldn't you know it, Warren Buffett actually enjoys McDonald's. So you might want to put down somebody in this regard, but believe it or not, Warren Buffett is in his own right and is well known for enjoying McDonald's often because he eats there daily for breakfast. Again, you think this was an own, but I have to tell you that anyone who is sitting there looking and just wondering what in the world is being said, I think you may have kind of clowned your argument. But again, perhaps this might be something people expect of you. I just didn't expect it. So I'm quite surprised. And so I'm commenting on why I think I'm surprised and probably the other things that I'm seeing that's causing me a lot of surprise here. You said ultimately people who can afford it and have the money will gladly spend more for what they deem a better product from a quality perspective, or to get quality products sooner. And that absolutely goes for consoles with the best games or exclusives too. Well, what you've just revealed, Nib, is the absolute poor spending habits of a lot of gamers. A lot of gamers are bad spenders. This is just a reality. We take the fact that these games are of a childhood, emotional, I would say, vestige of ours. And we sometimes want to overdo. We do things like double dipping and, supporting the devs and all this other stuff that we do, which is fine. Everybody has a place that they can splurge and so on and so forth. However, this seems to have become a spending problem as we've continued to grow up, because not only do we just spend and leave me alone, let me do what I want with my money, I'll never tell you what to do with your money, right? But we still support poor habits in these developers. We'll still be buying their broken, busted games, even when they tell us, yo, this game is running at 2 FPS, don't touch it. We're like, it's probably going to run differently from me. Or before you know what's going on, this GPU is overpriced, I couldn't be bothered. And those are the habits that a lot of gamers like. I'm guilty in I have my own sins, late people. I mean, if you want a confessional, we can open it up right here and VG is going to spill the beans. But what you're doing is you're exposing us gamers and trying to make it to be some flex, when in the real world and in the real sense, we probably need to be behaving very differently. Not saying we should join the UVPS members, but I'm just saying that at least we need to take a very good look on how we are making these gaming companies super wealthy. The execs, their children probably go to private school, while we or our children go to public school, because what? We're buying the games. There was one the other day that was showing another kid his fleet of exotic cars as the head of a studio of a game that many of our cohorts of gamers sunk billions of hours into, with microtransactions and all, for our entertainment. Just saying. And so you said, just as it might for GPUs, TVs, or even choosing the best third-party games to play day and date instead of watching for sales or ones randomly chosen by a platform to go into a subscription. Nib, the data doesn't even support what the heck it is you just said. When Matt Piscatella showed up on Greg's show, he basically put out that there are only about, there's a small percentage of you, about 4% of you, if you consider yourself in that category, or if any gamer considers themselves in that category, that will buy more than one game every month. And then there are 12 who would buy probably one game every 6 months. So you make it sound like, there are these people who just, categorize quality and such. But I can tell you that majority of the people who you're categorizing, many of them probably do not care about frugality and do not care about actually maintaining a stable financial standing. Rather, they just spend as they wish. Now, this is not to say that some that are also wealthy aren't spending in that category as well. But again, you seem to pretty much throw it as, oh, if you're not doing this thing that makes it look like you have money, then you must not have money. That is an infantile way of looking at these particular matters. I pulled out these examples to show you that the behaviors that you're pointing to are actually quite weird and wonky, because you then came out and said, well, saving money on games, and you talked about how people can buy a game in UK and try to return it from hot UK deals and then save and get, and do a trade-in and get 90% of their money and blah, 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 and how it saves you more money and you can play more games that are from whichever publisher you want compared to one that is like on Game Pass and blah, blah, blah. If you follow that strategy, then you should tell everybody to unsubscribe from PlayStation Plus, because PlayStation Plus is even worse. They're taking your money and they're not even giving you anything close. But I have to say, this was very, very surprising for me to see such shameful behaviors from people online. All because somebody said it makes sense that most PlayStation gamers, or some PlayStation gamers, will look at the value proposition and pursue it. Because the data shows, as we've said, that only about 16% of people are frequent game buyers. Others play free-to-play games or buy games on sale. So Sir Brevian is actually correct if we evaluate the data, and you, sir, are off base. I don't know what the heck it is that you decided that you were going to go ahead and write in this missive that was going to help you. But all the time and all the while, the data continues to expose this whole gaming conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I've told you before that a lot of people that have been talking in the console base all these years, they've never really been asked to actually defend their position. They've just run free. Now is the day that they have to actually come out and hold down their position. And we're seeing exactly the fact that there is no conviction behind it. It's just blind faith. Nothing that even says, okay, I truly hold this because I can see these material evidence pieces that tell me that this is the case. Instead, they go on ad hominems, attacking people, calling them names, using every single measure. It's not going to work. In fact, what you continue to do is you continue to draw more and more attention to the subject matter, which now has a body of data and evidence that is going to always refute the things that you say, because you're not arguing in good faith. If you argued in good faith, you would make strong points. This must change, and it will change. It will change. It will take a while, but, I'm happy that we're having this conversation. And, as much as I didn't want to touch this video, I think, it was necessary that somebody said something in this light. It's all right. we'll keep talking. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate the, time and audience that you have given to this. And, it is what it is. Don't go bother anybody, on their personal accounts. Just, this is just an educational piece to show that there's much that we can still glean in terms of understanding the world and how it works. Peace out.